So we'll go into it. So I want to talk to you guys about anti-aging, aka longevity. Obviously, this is a really big topic, so I'm not going to have the means to cover everything because you would be bored out of your mind and here for days. So I am going to just highlight the most scientifically proven and effective ways to kind of slow down that clock. So what we're going to do is first I'm going to talk to you guys about me and why I'm qualified to be here talking to you guys today. And then we're going to start by talking about the top 3 health concerns we want to be aware of as we start to age. And then this is going to make all of the treatments make a lot more sense. So you will know what it is that we're trying to prevent and why we're doing these things. And then we're going to move into the top anti-aging diets, the top anti-aging health habits, and the top anti-aging supplements. And then we're going to leave plenty of time at the end for questions. So if you have questions as we go, feel free to type them into the chat box. I won't be able to address them as we go, just because of the way the presentation screen is, but I will make sure to answer them at the end. So if you want to jot them down before you forget, then feel free to, and I will address them all when we're done. So this is me. I'm a naturopathic doctor. And so for you guys who don't know what naturopathic medicine is, I find it's probably easiest to compare it to an MD, which everyone knows what it is, and just so you can highlight the differences there. So we too go to school for about 8 years, and a portion of our schooling is dedicated to clinical-based practice, but where we really differ is in our approach to medicine. So we tend to take a more holistic approach, and what that means is we are trained to look at the mental health, the physical health, and then all the different body systems. And what we're trying to do with that is we're trying to tie it all together and figure out what's going on at the root of all of it. So because we do this different approach, it generally means that we have longer visits. So these visits are going to be around 30 minutes all the way up to an hour. And we're trained in a wide variety of things. So we're trained in nutrition, exercise therapy, acupuncture, botanical medicine, chiropractic medicine, pharmaceuticals. So we're trained in a wide breadth of things, so that way we can kind of tailor our approach to each person's individualized needs. And so that's kind of naturopathic medicine in a nutshell. I personally got into naturopathic medicine because I had my own health concerns. As a teenager, I had really bad digestive issues. And fortunately for me, my aunt was the only naturopathic doctor in the entire town. So naturally, I went to her and she fixed me up. And I thought it was just the coolest thing ever. It made my life so much better. And the more I looked into it, the more the holistic approach to medicine just made more sense to me. And then the rest is history. So in order to do this, though, I went to the University of Calgary for my undergrad, and I got my Bachelor's of Biological Sciences. And then I went to Boucher, as Kent mentioned, and that's an additional 4 years, and that is in New Westminster. And right now, I'm practicing downtown Vancouver at Evoke Integrative Medicine. So this is West Georgia and Burrard. And my focuses in practice, as Kent already said, are cardiovascular health, endurance training, diabetes, weight management, and stress management. And just so for those of you that don't know what environmental medicine is, it's essentially pulling toxins out of the body. So that's it. And I'll stop talking about myself now. And I just want to preface this all with a quote. So David Sinclair is a really famous geneticist who has dedicated his whole life's work to figuring out longevity and how we can slow aging. And what he says is, as a species, we are living much longer than ever, but not much better, not at all. Over the past century, we have gained additional years, but not additional life, not a life worth living anyways. So essentially what this means is longevity is focusing less so on increasing the number of years, but more so on increasing the quality of those years. So we're really good at extending life, but we're not really good at extending quality of life, or at least not quite yet. So the theme of this is a lot of how do we increase the quality of our life. Okay. So first off, we're going to talk about the top 3 things that you're trying to prevent. cardiovascular disease. So we're going to start off with this one because it is the second leading cause of death in Canada, but it is the #1 leading cause of disability-adjusted life years. So what that means is it takes into account the years lost to early death, but it also takes into account the healthy years lost to being in a state of poor health. So essentially, cardiovascular disease may not be the leading cause of death, but it is the leading cause of a poor quality life. And so we have to ask ourselves, why is cardiovascular disease so prevalent? Well, this is because we are continually exposed to things that are breaking down our heart and our blood vessels. So this can be things like poor diet. So from a dietary point of view, it could be things in your diet that are directly damaging your blood vessels. So that's something like a really high sugar diet. Or it could mean there are things lacking in your diet that are needed for things to work more optimally and function properly. And we're going to touch on that a little more later. We also get exposed to a lot of environmental toxins. So this could be things like heavy metals, cigarette smoke, pesticides, herbicides. A lot of our cosmetic beauty products have toxins in them. So we're getting a lot of exposures that way. And again, those are damaging to your heart, damaging to your blood vessels. And over time, that damage will lead to things like heart attack and stroke. So we're going to try and prevent that the best we can. Lack of exercise. So lack of exercise is being coined the new cigarettes. And this is because it is just as bad for your cardiovascular health. And it leads to just as many chronic health conditions. So lack of exercise is going to be a big risk factor. And then last but not least, there's stress. High stress is pretty much bad for every part of your body, but when we're thinking about it simply, it just creates a lot of inflammation in your body. And if that's not dealt with properly, then that's gonna cause a lot of problems down the road. And of course, with genetics, these are things we can't really control, but I am gonna talk to you a little bit later about epigenetics, which is kind of how our environment influences our genes. So in that way, we do have a little bit of control over our genes. And so the thing with cardiovascular disease is obviously these are a lot of things you can't really control. You're exposed to a lot of things that are building up damage in your body, but you don't really know it till quite far along, especially with cardiovascular disease. So the problem with this one is it's coined the silent killer, and that's because symptoms such as chest pain won't start to happen until you have already clogged your arteries by 75%. So you're already quite advanced at that stage. So with regular checkups and early screening, you're trying to catch it before it's gotten that far. So this could mean going to your doctor and getting your cholesterol and your blood pressure checked. But if you want to take that one step further, there's advanced testing that someone like myself can do. So I do this test in my, oh, sorry guys. Oh, no, never mind. It was a chat box. So there's things that I do in my clinic called the pulse test. And what this is designed is it's designed to tell you your exact heart age. So you could be 50 with the heart of a 40-year-old, or you could be 40 with the heart of a 50-year-old. And these sort of tests will tell you exactly that and exactly which areas of your health to focus on. So those kind of tests are incredible for preventing these things from occurring in the first place. And then of course, like anything, you just really want to pay attention to your body. Like you really want to be in tune with what is regular to you so that you notice when things are starting to shift out of place, and then you can get on top of things early. And then that way you're not creating irreversible damage. Okay. And then cancer. So this is the leading cause of death, and we all kind of have a 40% chance of getting it in our lifetime. And that doesn't mean a 40% chance of dying. It means just a 40% chance that some sort of cancerous growth is going to develop. But the good news is it's also very preventable. So with cancer, the #1 thing you want to do is screen early. And this is especially true if you have a family history of cancer. The thing is, there are certain cancers, especially ones with really strong genetic components, where you have to screen as early as 25 years old. So it really should start sooner rather than later. And then if you have this discussion with your doctor early on, say you have a family history of colon cancer, well, your doctor is going to say, well, you really want to pay attention to fiber specifically. because that is very preventative for colon cancer. So if you go and have this conversation early on, you can kind of tailor your preventative measures based on your family history. And then, of course, you want to reduce those toxin exposures. So the same things that are causing the cardiovascular disease can also cause cancer. And this is because these things called like oxidative damage and toxins, they're going to damage your DNA, and that's where you get mutations. And then if you build up enough of those mutations and you're not repairing it enough, then that's how you get cancer. So the toxin point is about the damage, but the antioxidant is about the repair. So those are going to reverse some of the damage that you're inevitably being exposed to. And the same with exercise. Exercise has been shown to increase your immune system function. So again, it's going to help counteract all of the damage you're kind of inevitably accumulating just through living. So that's a big one there. And then last but not least, brain degeneration. So when you talk to people about their brain, their number one concern is usually memory loss. I do not want to have dementia later in life. And I mean, rightfully so, because 1 out of every 14 people over the age of 65 will get dementia, and 1 out of 6 people over the age will get dementia. So anything you can do to try and slow that process is going to be really helpful. But it's not the only thing. You can also start to lose your processing speed, your ability to plan, your ability to solve, your ability to focus. So these are all just telltale signs that your brain is needing some loving. And again, this is because we accumulate damage in our brain, just the same as our heart, just the same as the rest of our tissues. And they've actually found, starting at age 30, your brain is actually declining in size, which is a bit of a scary thought, but fortunately there are things we can do to slow that process, so no panic. And back to the cardiovascular point, the more we damage our blood vessels, the less we're going to be able to bring nutrients to our brain, and the less we're going to be able to remove toxins from our brain. So that's what those last 2 points are about. We just become less efficient at delivering the reparative molecules and less efficient at taking out the damaging molecules. So let's move on to some more positivity and what we can do about all of this rather than the doom and gloom. So we're going to start with foods and diet. So we'll just talk first about general things you can include into your diet for anti-aging purposes. So the first one is going to be antioxidants, and I know that the nutritionist last week talked a lot about this, so I won't beat it to death, but essentially those are, again, the things that are repairing all of the damage that you're accruing over the years. And a neat trick is to just look at your fruits and vegetables, and if they're really deep in hue, they probably are really high in antioxidants. So those are your really deeply shaded berries and plums. This is the bright green matcha. This is the really dark green or dark brown cocoa bean. So things like that. Those are all really good reparative nutrients. You also want to include foods in your diet that are supporting your detox pathways. So what that means is those are the pathways for your toxins to get out of the body entirely. So things like broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, onion, garlic, they're all helping the body's ability to get rid of everything that you're exposed to. And then lastly, you want to include methylating foods. So this one's a little more complicated, so bear with me. The epigenetics I was kind of referring to earlier, that's through methylation. So when we're born, we have our genes, but we also have a methylation pattern on those genes. And what that tells us, or tells our genes, is to turn on and off certain things at certain times. So you start with this beautiful pattern that is telling everything exactly when to turn on and exactly when to turn off. But over time, as you age, this methylation pattern becomes disrupted. So these foods have the methyl groups necessary to re-add those methylation groups onto your DNA. So you have that youthful pattern again. So it's all about just maintaining this youthful pattern on your genes so your cells are functioning as if you're 15 rather than 50, sort of thing. And then of course you want to try and avoid as many toxins as possible. And so those are found in your highly processed foods, your really high sugar foods, because sugar is directly damaging if it's too high, and then your highly sprayed foods. So a nice trick for the sprayed foods is, if any of you guys have heard of like the Dirty Dozen, it's all over the internet, so it's really easy to find. Those are the top sprayed foods, like produce. So those are the ones you really want to try and get organic, if at all possible, just to lessen your exposure. So I've talked about detox. I'm sure all of you have heard of a friend going on a detox diet of some sort in your life. And the reason for this is because, as I mentioned, we're exposed to a lot of things, and we're exposed to a lot of things that we never used to be exposed to. So we have this innate machinery in our bodies that is designed to remove these toxins. So we were always exposed to little things here and there. Even like the campfire of the cavemen is like, technically the fumes are toxic. So we always had ways of getting rid of that so it doesn't cause too much damage. But the thing is, we have too much right now. So these pathways get blocked up, and then the toxins start to store in your tissues. And that's essentially how aging begins, is those toxins storing in your tissues and then just disrupting everything. So much like you want to do a spring cleaning with your garage or your closets, you want to do a spring cleaning of your body. And these detox diets are designed to have foods that are really clean and low in toxins, but also the foods, like I mentioned earlier, that are supporting these pathways. And it's also usually having a supplement on the side that is enhancing your pathways. And this all sounds great, and usually you can do it quite well on your own, but the problem is, if you don't do it properly, it actually can be quite dangerous. So there's two phases to the detox. There's bringing all of the toxins that have been stored in your tissues up, and then the second part is pulling them out, whether that be through your feces or your urine. So if you pull them up quicker than you take them out, you can actually make yourself a lot sicker. So this detox diet can work against you and not for you. So that's why I usually recommend, at least for the first few times, that you do it under doctor supervision, so that you avoid that inevitable detox sickness that can happen if you do things kind of in an imbalanced way. So the ketogenic diet. This is, for those of you who don't know what it is, it's a high fat, moderate protein, and low carb diet. And it's good for a lot of things, and it's getting a lot of attention in the research. But the two things that I find it's really, really good at is it's really healthy for your brain, and it's really good for cancer prevention. So how it works is, when you lower your carbs to the 5 to 10% mark, your body can no longer use sugar for fuel. So normally, all of your cells will preferentially use sugar as its primary fuel source, just because it's a really quick and easy source. But if you lower it to the point where there's not many carbs or sugars around, then your body's forced to use an alternative source of fuel, which are ketones. And that's why it's called the ketogenic diet. It's using fat for fuel rather than sugar. And this is considered a superior fuel form, especially for the brain. So there's two reasons for that. First off, as I've kind of alluded before, high sugar in general is just really bad. Obviously, it leads to things like diabetes, but the sugar itself can be quite damaging. And they're actually finding now that Alzheimer's is actually starting to kind of get renamed as type 3 diabetes. And that's because they're finding that specific types of Alzheimer's are actually just a very abnormal presentation of diabetes. And high sugar in general has been linked to memory loss. So that's the first reason why ketogenic diets are really favorable. And then the second reason is they are finding that your brain gets less efficient at taking sugar up as we age. The machinery just starts to break down. But fortunately, the ketones get in through a totally different route. So you're kind of bypassing this broken machinery. And obviously that's a problem, because your your brain needs energy to function properly, but it also needs energy to repair itself. So if you have some form of ketones, you're kind of just making sure your brain has fuel, more or less. And again, doctor guided is ideal because there are certain conditions where this is not really warranted. So for example, if you have kidney troubles, then a ketogenic diet is not going to be good for you. So it's always good to just run these past people before you dive right into it. Intermittent fasting. So this is by far my #1 favorite thing to recommend to patients because it's so simple, it's so effective, and there's very, very few contraindications to doing it. So the reason it's so good, especially from an anti-aging perspective, is because first, you are inducing a temporary ketosis. So everything I talked about with the ketogenic diet, you're getting that during the fasting window. So if you fast for 14 to 18 hours a day, rather than just the 8 hours you're sleeping, your body obviously doesn't have very many sugars, and so it's going to start producing ketones. So you'll get all of those benefits. And then also, when you're fasting, if your body's not spending all this energy trying to digest, then it has more energy to spend towards repairing. So like we said, we're exposed to a lot of toxins. Your body needs to deal with that. So it's just giving it more time to deal with that. And then it's been linked to reduction in heart disease, cancer, diabetes, Alzheimer's. Intermittent fasting is linked to a ton of good research. And from an anti-aging point of view, it again affects that methylation pattern. So when you're fasting, you produce these things called sirtuins. And the sirtuins are what preserve that healthy methylation pattern I was just talking about. So the youthful methylation pattern you have on your genes, intermittent fasting is going to help preserve that. And then, so again, that's typically 14 to 18 hours a day. So usually you'll start at 14 hours and then you'll build your way up. And then ideally it is water only. You will see when you look up fasting that there's different versions, and sometimes they'll allow fat during the fasting window. But if you're looking at it from a pure intermittent fasting, it's just water. Okay, so what are some of the lifestyle habits you can do to reverse that clock? Exercise. I'm kind of preaching to the choir here because a lot of you are coming from Symmetrix, but they say if exercise could be packaged in a pill, it would be the single most widely prescribed and beneficial medicine in the entire nation, which is true because not exercising is a risk factor for pretty much everything. But if we're looking at the positives, from a brain point of view, exercise increases this thing called BDNF, and what that does is it increases your brain's plasticity. And what that means is it's your brain's ability to adapt and rewire. So when you're learning new things and forming new pathways, exercise is really going to ramp that process up. So you're going to be able to learn new things more easily if you're living an active lifestyle. It's also going to slow that shrinkage that starts at 30. So this is one of the few things that has been shown to actually slow that process down completely. Another thing is it's going to shorten telomeres. So this is another one that requires a little bit of explanation. So that DNA I was talking about, at the ends of both of the DNAs, they have these things called telomeres. And as we age, they kind of get shorter and shorter and shorter. And that's like one of the leading hypotheses for why we age is that our telomeres get shorter. So this has actually been shown to slow that process down. And then all of this is fine and dandy, but does it actually do anything? And the answer is yes. They've studied it, and people who exercise versus people who don't exercise have been shown to live on average almost a decade longer. So that's a good motivator, if nothing else. And then sleep. So it's a pretty common misconception that we don't actually need sleep as we age. That's not true. We do need it. We just become less good at it. And this is because over time, our melatonin will decrease. And that's a result of all the damage we kind of accumulate. And your melatonin is what you need to reach your deeper stages of sleep. That's your sleep hormone. You also decrease the amount of hours you sleep on average. as you age, and the quality. So the quality of the sleep is usually referring to the amount of deep sleep versus not deep sleep. So these are your stages of 3 and 4 sleep. Melatonin will help you push you into it. And the deep sleep is where all of the repairing is happening. So there is such thing as a good sleep versus a bad sleep. If you have more deep sleep, you're actually repairing the damage. You're removing the toxins from your brain, and that only occurs in deep sleep. So these habits that I'm talking about on the slide here are all aimed to increase the quality of your sleep more so than the hours. So if we talk about the same bedtime every night, the reason for that is our sleep hormones are on a 24-hour clock. So we are supposed to have really high cortisol or really high melatonin in the middle of the night, but it's supposed to be really low during the day, so you can be more wakeful. And so if you go to bed at the exact same time and wake up at the exact same time, your body will know exactly when to release that hormone. And so everything just becomes way more streamlined. You'll fall asleep quicker, and you'll also wake up faster. So it's kind of a way to trick your body into just sleeping way better. Another thing is complete darkness. So these hormones that are on a 24-hour clock, they respond to light. So if you, like myself, live in a more populated area and you get a lot of street lights coming in through the window, that actually messes with your body, and it tricks your body into thinking it's daytime, and these hormones are going to respond to that. So if you haven't invested in some blackout curtains, that's usually something I recommend to people who have sleeping troubles. It just kind of eliminates that problem. That's going to be the same reason we don't want screen time before bed. There's actually particular light that comes off of your screen that is particularly bad, but in general, it's the same concept. If you're getting a lot of light before bed, your body doesn't know it's time to turn off, it's time to go to sleep. So usually I'll recommend that you read before bed, journal, stretch, have a bath, basically anything aside from screen time an hour before bed if you can help it. Stress is going to be massive. So the people who, kind of like the cue I get when people are saying that they have stress problems and sleep problems, what it's going to present as is you're going to be tired all day, and then as soon as you go to bed, you're going to start ruminating about what you need to do tomorrow, what you didn't do today, and like your brain is racing, but your body is physically tired. That's a sign to me that your stress is not being managed appropriately, and that's the reason you're not sleeping very well. And then you could always supplement melatonin, because as I said before, it brings you into that deeper stage of sleep. And no caffeine after 2 p.m. Everyone's a little different on this one. So caffeine in general is said to stay in your system for 6 hours. Some people eliminate that way quicker. Some people eliminate that way slower. So it can vary from person to person. Like we all know that person who can have a cup of coffee and then pass right out. So that would be someone who can eliminate caffeine really quickly, but not all of us are that lucky. So if you're not sleeping well, you might want to consider cutting out caffeine just a little earlier in the day. And then lastly, we're going to go over some of the supplements that are really good for longevity. Glutathione. So this is actually a pretty simple molecule. It's just 3 different types of proteins put together, but it is the most important antioxidant in your entire body. So this is in virtually all cells of your entire body, and it's counteracting that damage. And it is necessary for the second phase of detox. So I often will give people glutathione when I put them on a detox program, because it is really helping with the elimination portion. So it's really making sure you don't get that detox reaction where you mobilize too many toxins, but you can't get rid of them. If you have glutathione in your diet, it's really good at getting rid of them. So it speeds the second part up. And then again, it's going to improve that methylation pattern. So maintaining your youthful genetic expression. The only thing with glutathione though, is it doesn't make a very good oral supplement. So people will buy it at the grocery store in just like a little hard capsule, and it's kind of a waste of your money because your stomach acid will break it down before it gets into your bloodstream. So if you are going to go to a store and try and get glutathione, you want to make sure it's liposomal, and that's that word on the screen there. And what that essentially means is it's been packaged with fat, so it gets in a little easier and it bypasses your stomach acid. But the best way to get glutathione into your body is intravenously. And they're actually starting to find that glutathione, because we're exposed to so many things, will decrease with time. And they found that people who live past 80 tend to have way higher glutathione levels when they measure it. So just a good reason to try and keep up with your antioxidants. And then last but not least, this word is going to kill me. Resveratrol. Sorry, guys. When people talk about the health benefits of wine, they're talking about the resveratrol in the wine. I'm sorry to say, it's not enough. You would have to drink a lot of glass of wine, or many, many glasses of wine to get adequate levels, but it is an incredible longevity supplement. So it's really a really good antioxidant. It's a really potent anti-inflammatory. It again is going to preserve those telomeres. So the ends of your DNA that shrink with time, it's going to stop that from happening. It's going to preserve that methylation pattern, so that youthful genetic expression, and it has been shown to slow death. So the guy I quoted earlier on, David Sinclair, the famous geneticist, this is his favorite supplement, and he studied it a ton in animal models and human models, and it's one of the most simple things you can include as far as supplements go to kind of just reverse that clock. And so that pretty much concludes it. I didn't want to take up too much of your guys' time today because for those of you who live in Vancouver, it is absolutely beautiful outside. But I do commend all of you for coming out here today. If nothing else, longevity is just about getting on top of things sooner rather than later. So it's a lot of preventative measures. So you guys just being here today says a lot, and it's a great step forward. And as a gift for you guys, I wanted to offer you a complimentary 20-minute meet and greet with me. So Kent's going to send out the information, so you don't have to jot any of this down. But if you would like to sit down and have a talk with me to figure out if naturopathic medicine is a good choice for you, then you are welcome to do that. And it's a non-committal way of just visiting with me and seeing what it's all about. And yeah, let's answer some questions that you guys have. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you so much to you, Robin. That's a great presentation.
Yeah, I might have raced through it a little bit. Sorry, guys.
No, I loved it. I learned a lot. A little disappointed to know that my brain is declining in size, but I do get lots of exercise.
Exercising, right? So.
Yeah, exactly. And I'll have to look up the methylation pattern. I thought that was a pretty cool concept.
Yeah, it's really complicated. So sorry, guys, if it was a little over your head. It's complicated for even someone like myself who's like studied this for 8 years. So no judgment. Do you believe you can eliminate HBP with diet?
High blood pressure.
Oh, okay. I was like, is this a chemical? Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of really good diets out there. So this is kind of the bread and butter of what I do. But yeah, if you have a compliant patient, absolutely. There are like a lot of it, if you already have really high blood pressure, a lot of it is going to be working with the person who's already on medication and slowly taking them off medication. You don't want to go cold turkey because it can obviously be quite dangerous. Yeah. But yeah, there's definite ways you can do it with people. The other thing to note is that with age,